Howdy there, phenomenal human. Your decision to watch this video has just turned my brain into a fireworks factory of happiness, and subscribing would probably cause a full-scale celebration that involves dancing penguins and confetti cannons. Time to embark on this wild ride. As I passed by the glass walls of the conference room, my world nosedived from terrible to a full-blown catastrophe, what the Scots might call a pure borax. Bill was up front, projecting snapshots from a wedding he'd gone to the day before. But it wasn't the happy couple or the venue that pulled my gaze. It was the background. There, as plain as day, was Darren Bryant, my personal arch-enemy, wrapping his arms around my wife, Judith, as they strolled toward what was unmistakably a hotel entrance. Bill knew Judith, which meant he also knew exactly what he was showing. No one said a word to me. Not Bill, not anyone in the room. These were my friends, my colleagues, people I saw more than my own family. And judging from their snickering and side glances, it was clear they'd all seen the photo before. They knew. Worse, they'd known for a while. I kept walking. If any of them noticed me, they didn't show it. I tried to convince myself they hadn't seen me, that they weren't laughing at me. I later found out they absolutely were. Our manager, Donald Harvey, had always dumped extra work on me whenever Brian was out. That day was no exception. I was stuck covering for him again. Harvey had even axed my planned vacation because, apparently, Bryant had to teach some emergency seminar. Judith left town alone, or at least that's what I'd believed. Now I wasn't so sure. The rest of the day was a blur. I barely touched my actual work, too busy fantasizing about revenge. Not just on my cheating wife and that smug bastard Bryant, but on every colleague who'd laughed behind my back. I couldn't stand being in that office a second longer. I marched straight to HR to ask about my resignation notice and unused annual leave. I figured I was owed at least 7 weeks. That's when I got the shock. Harvey hadn't officially canceled my vacation at all. I pulled out the letter he sent, canceling my leave and citing Bryant's class as the reason. Stella, the HR rep, just gave me this pitying look. She knew too. Everyone freaking knew. Anger surged through me. I laid everything out for Stella and her roommate, who worked as the financial controller. See, I'm obsessively organized, some might say clinically. It's probably fair to call it OCD, but it paid off. I had detailed records of every task, every expense, every overtime hour. Thanks to those records, we uncovered that Harvey had been doctoring documents to block my payments, diverting those funds straight to Bryant. Eventually, they confirmed I had 9 weeks and 3 days of unused leave. 17,000 pounds had been wrongly paid to Bryant under my name. Stella printed every single record for me. I made my own copies. I didn't trust a soul. Because of my specialized role, my notice period was 12 weeks. I returned to my desk and drafted my resignation. I didn't hand it to Harvey. I just stared at him, long and hard, until the color drained from his face. I'd always been the compliant one, only raised my voice when forced to cover Bryant's work. Then I scheduled a meeting with David Bennett, the CEO and a member of the family that owned the company. His secretary said he was busy. I told her it couldn't wait, and if he wasn't available, I'd be contacting a lawyer. She blinked in surprise. That wasn't the version of me anyone at the office knew. She went back in to check. He told her he'd be available in 20 minutes. From the sound of his voice, I could tell he already had some idea what was coming. Later, I realized he was probably trying not to laugh. When I came back, he made me wait another 10 minutes. Then he waved me in. No handshake. No pleasantries. Sorry for the delay, he said. Well, Adam, what's got you so fired up? He smirked. To my surprise, I was calm. Dead calm. I handed over my resignation. I've had enough, I said. My vacation was taken from me under false pretenses. My wife's running around with Darren Bryant while I'm stuck covering his workload. Everyone in the office has had a laugh about it. Meanwhile, Harvey's been altering payroll to funnel over $17,000 of my pay to Bryant. Here are the supporting documents. Because of my upcoming leave, though Harvey tried handing it off to Bryant, I was left with a little over 2 weeks of work left. I'd complete those final days, but I had no intention of covering for Bryant. Let him face the consequences. Let him crash and burn if it came to that. Bennett didn't say a word, but the smug satisfaction in his eyes spoke volumes. He looked like he was savoring my discomfort. You didn't know Bryant's been seeing your wife, did you? The bastard actually smirked. You're blind as hell, man. He brags about it all the time. I'll handle your finances. Now get lost, he snapped. That was all I needed. 2 weeks to settle the score. Bryant was at the top of that list. I left the office, and the receptionist looked like she might faint. I wasn't just angry. I radiated it. Every part of me screamed I was done being walked on. Back at my desk, the atmosphere was thick with tension. People stared, but nobody dared speak. They'd never seen me like this. I wrapped up my assignments like clockwork. Harvey had forced me to use my personal phone for company business to avoid costs. My phone handled dual SIMs, so I'd made it work. Now I removed the company's SIM and left it on the desk. They wouldn't get a second more than they were owed. As I walked out, I could feel their eyes on me like I was a ghost. Bill called out, "Leaving on time, Adam? Everything okay?" "Got somewhere to be," I said flatly, barely slowing down. It was Thursday evening. Even the banks were still open. I walked into one, met with a clerk, and set up new accounts under my name only. Then she pulled up the balance of the joint account Judith and I shared. And I felt the heat rise in my chest. Almost empty. Missed payments. I asked why her account hadn't been funding it like the mandate required. She told me Judith had revoked her authorization 10 months ago. The clerk quickly apologized, realizing she'd spoken out of turn. I told her not to worry, I wouldn't report her. But inside, a storm was building. I left the bank with my thoughts spiraling. I needed time. I needed a plan. Let me give you a bit of context. My name's Adam Holliday. I'm 29. Not bad looking, in good shape. I hit the gym a few times a week, run when I can. I'm a mechanical engineer with strong skills in electrical systems and computer diagnostics. My work involves high-end machinery, stuff local techs can't handle. Because of that, I travel a lot. People don't notice me. I'm the guy in the background, fixing problems quietly. I don't draw attention. I just do the job better than anyone else. Still, I've been treated like a fool, but I'm not stupid. I was just loyal to my job, to Judith, to the wrong people. I always wanted our company to thrive. I helped everyone who needed it, except Bryant. That guy's been my nemesis since childhood. Calling him an asshole would be giving him too much credit. Assholes are at least useful. Judith had started treating me like something beneath her years ago. Now I understood why. Whenever I tried to open up to her, she dodged the conversation. She was used to getting what she wanted. At first I gave in because I loved her, wanted her happy. Lately it was just to avoid her venom. I know how this sounds, like I'm spineless. But I thought love meant putting someone else's needs first. Clearly she didn't think the same. When I got home, I went straight to my home office. I often worked there. It was quieter, more efficient. No kids, thankfully, so I'd converted one of the rooms. That night, I started designing the most critical strategy of my life. If she'd had a meaningless fling, maybe I could have been convinced, maybe even sought therapy, made an effort to fix things. But she never gave me the chance. Every time I tried to talk, she brushed it off. But she knew how much I hated Bryant. So she didn't just cheat. She picked the one person who would cut the deepest. This wasn't an affair, it was an attack. Knowing it was him made it unforgivable. The betrayal itself was devastating, but who she did it with made it feel like I'd been gutted. And it all started with what I learned at that damn bank. I went through every bank statement from the past 2 years. I extracted the relevant entries and compiled them into an Excel spreadsheet. Next, I scrutinized the credit card records and followed the same process. I cross-checked the payments made to the hotel with my own work calendar and discovered there were consistently 6 to 10 charges each month, never fewer. A significant number of those charges occurred when I was covering shifts for Bryant at various sites. It wouldn't surprise me if they found it amusing that I was footing the bill for their escapades. I hoped he had at least chipped in occasionally, though with his track record, I seriously doubted it. This morning, I was on my way to one of Bryant's assignments when I got a call. They had to cancel because of a self-isolation requirement following a COVID outbreak at the plant. If that hadn't happened, I wouldn't have gone into the office and seen that photo. Coincidentally, I had covered for Bryant just the day before. There were multiple deals Harvey had me cancel while Judith was away on holiday. One in particular involved a photographer. Since there was a time zone difference, I figured he might already be in his studio. I called and introduced myself to the receptionist. I explained we had a fire and lost the images he had taken. I asked if he still had them in his archive. She checked and confirmed they were still available. Printing and shipping them overseas would cost quite a bit. But if she could email them instead, I could either print them myself or have my firm handle it. I thanked her and asked for the digital versions. It was more practical for both of us. International post can be unreliable. I then opened the file with all the evidence I had compiled. The photos validated my suspicions. Bryant's role had been to entertain my wife at my expense. Judith always insisted on having the newest car model. She leases them. Last year, she left behind her driver's license and bank cards, so the lease had to be taken out in my name. Unsurprisingly, she hadn't paid a single installment. The lease ends in 2 months, which I found perfect. That gives me use of the car for a short while longer, but I have no intention of renewing. To manage all this, I needed access to her financial accounts. When we got married, she was adamant about maintaining her own banking setup. She didn't want to explain how she spent her money. She works in advertising, so we agreed to separate personal accounts, while jointly funding household costs, groceries, council tax, vacations, and the like. I changed all the passwords on the phone, laptop, and safe. I checked that the prenuptial agreement, something her father had insisted on, was still valid. I made a digital copy and stored it in a folder under a misleading, technical-sounding name, something she'd likely mistake for work files if she ever gained access to my account. That file was also protected with its own unique password. All of my critical documents, including that one, were backed up to a secure cloud drive via VPN. I used a key generator for password creation. No simple or predictable ones. I totaled up the amount Judith owed me. It came to just over $47,000. I had been unknowingly funding that hotel room for over a year. The vacation alone had cost $11,000. We had a joint savings account containing $150,000. That money was originally meant for renovating the house, my idea, since it's spacious, with big rooms and ample land for future children to play in, if she ever decided she was ready. We had discussed kids before marriage, but her stance shifted soon after. We focused on her career instead. If I didn't like it, that was my problem. I asked myself why I had tolerated it for so long. She had wanted to purchase some overpriced flat in a flashy part of town. I said no. That upset her immensely. It might have been one of the few times I stood firm. That home improvement fund sat untouched. She didn't contribute anything to it for over a year. I added $6,000 myself. Looking back now, it's obvious what her plan was. If we moved into a new home, her name would go on the title. I would be the one paying for most of it. And in the event of a divorce, she'd be entitled to a share of that new property. I narrowly avoided walking into that trap. So I transferred the $150,000 into a new account under my name. If she complained, I'd point out that her supposed portion equaled the debt she owed me. Once all financial transitions were completed, I canceled both the debit and credit cards linked to our joint account. Now I realize how careless I was not to monitor the finances more closely. Judith handled all of it. And why did I trust her? Especially considering the way she's treated me. Judith still hadn't come home by the time I finished, so I slid the pizza into the oven to keep it warm. If Bryant hadn't been told, then Judith wouldn't know I was up to speed. But if she didn't show up at all, well, then I'd have my answer. She walked through the door just as I was finishing the last slice. Her reaction was more than surprised. She practically reeled. "I thought you were still at the office," she said, catching her breath. I gave her a casual smile. "Had a meeting. Left my phone behind. No big deal." She exhaled and loosened up. "I already ate," she said, heading for the stairs. "I'm going to take a shower." She moved quickly, almost too quickly, to the bedroom. I didn't need to guess why. Once I heard the water running, I got to work. She'd tossed her purse on the side table like she always did. I opened it and took out her phone and my wallet. Logging into the computer using her credentials was easy. I connected her bank card to the reader and started combing through her financials. The usual accounts were there, but so were 2 additional ones, each holding over $100,000. I saved everything. Account details, transaction histories. I downloaded her entire inbox too. Her phone was next. She used the same passcode on all her devices, which made things simple. I mirrored her texts and call logs to my own archive. Once I was done, I put everything back exactly where it had been and made myself a cup of tea. She came back downstairs dressed plainly, nothing like the sharp work attire she usually wore. I decided to prod her. "No effort for me, huh? Not even a touch of lipstick?" She shot me her usual tired look. "Too exhausted. Maybe tomorrow?" I chuckled. "Sure, why not? It's only been a whole year since you offered me access to your body. Maybe I should file for an annulment. You're technically still a virgin." Her expression tightened. She was trying to read me now, but I didn't care how she felt. I went on. "Bill was showing the wedding photos at the office yesterday when I got in." She looked startled. "I didn't think you'd be interested," she said. "Neither did I replied. "That was Marion's third wedding, wasn't it? Maybe this one will stick, assuming she can keep her legs closed for someone besides the best man." Judith's eyes hardened. "That's cruel. I've never heard you speak like that before." I didn't back down. "Word is she had herself quite a night at the hen party. You spilled the beans, didn't you?" Her tone sharpened. "You shouldn't listen to rumors. Everything went just fine." I let another arrow fly. That's not what I heard at the office water cooler. Hopefully they tested everyone for STDs after the festivities. She stormed off, slamming the bedroom door behind her. Hit a nerve, I thought. I returned to my study and started reading up on divorce law. Fortunately, the house was in my name before the marriage, so she had no legal claim to it. Normally, property is split evenly if no children are involved, but those secret accounts were definitely to my benefit. As for spousal support, the prenup her father pushed for came through in full force. It voided alimony in cases of infidelity. Any property outside shared assets, like a car, was off limits. The cheating partner had to shoulder all legal and financial costs. I would need more proof, though. Judith, Bennett, and Bryant would deny everything. The next morning, I rang up Danny, an old mate who worked as a plumber. He used to spend a lot of time fixing things at that hotel. We met up at the pub. He had a knack for entertaining everyone with stories about what he'd pulled out of toilets. That night, I chose the guest room. I wasn't about to let the Ice Queen warm up next to me. The following day, I went to work. My own job, not hers. Judith's reaction the night before, "I thought you were still at the office," suggested my phone might have been compromised. I checked the SIM no visible tracker. But when I tried a functioning SIM, I uncovered the hidden spyware, just like the internet guides described. So I bought a cheap $20 phone, inserted the company's SIM card, and left it at the office. On the commute, I gave Danny another call. I gave Danny the rundown on what Judith and Bryant were up to. He wasn't fond of Bryant either, couldn't stand the guy. Bryant used to terrorize everyone in school until I finally stood up to him and beat him senseless. After that, it was like he'd switched sides entirely, like someone had reassigned his entire personality. Danny had plans to visit the hotel that day, so he promised to fill me in later with whatever he found. He was already cooking up an idea to gather solid proof. By 4 that afternoon, I was back at work. Surprisingly, everything was running smoothly for once. I stopped by the finance department and submitted the details for my new bank account. I made it crystal clear that the information was confidential and under no circumstances to be shared. The way I said it clearly caught the girls in the department off guard. I clocked out at 5. Not long after, Danny called and suggested grabbing a pint. We settled on meeting at 8, back in our usual neighborhood spot. When I got home, Judith was still out. I threw together something to eat and settled in front of the TV. She walked in around 7 and looked genuinely surprised to find me there. I joked that I had a hot date lined up with a nymphomaniac. Told her maybe I'd see her again Monday. She stared at me, silent. Then she smiled, a sarcastic, bitter sort of smile. I grinned back. "Guess she'll be disappointed, huh?" I laughed it off. "Maybe she'll like me for me, not just for herself." I walked out before I lost control and cracked up right in front of her. She was fuming. Direct hit. That night it really started sinking in. Things were finally turning around. Danny met me at the pub, 2 fresh pints in hand, and we tucked ourselves into a quiet corner away from the crowd. "Adam," he said, "you don't deserve this mess. You're one of the good ones. You'd help anyone in need." He shook his head. "And not one person at work had the decency to tell you." "Screw them. Plenty of people can't stand Bryant," he added. "Remember Kate Duncan? Bryant used to yank her hair and torment her in school. Well, she's working at a hotel now, still single. Stunning, too. The kind of figure guys daydream about. He gave me a half smile. Not that she'd ever look twice at a married man like me. I told her what's going on, about Judith and Bryant and about you. Turns out, she still remembers you fondly. Because of that day, right? I asked. Exactly, Danny said. When you caught Bryant dragging her off the bench by her hair and snapped. I'd never seen you like that. Pure fury. You looked like you'd tear down a wall just to get to him. No one dared step in to stop you, he added with admiration. They've booked rooms next week, Wednesday and Thursday. Kate's making sure they get a separate room, just for them. There'll be a hidden camera. We'll catch everything on video. Once they're done, I'll fake an emergency call about a blocked toilet. I'll retrieve the camera and hand you the SD card myself. He grinned. The device is tiny. It'll be hidden inside the smoke alarm right above the bed. I looked at him and said, I owe you both. He just shook his head. No, mate. That's exactly what he's earned. I honestly thought Judith was smarter than this, I added. We downed a couple more beers and eventually called it a night. The next morning, Judith brought up the car lease, said maybe it was time to look at a new vehicle. I asked, You mean my car? It's in my name. You haven't put a single cent toward it. I told her I'd happily go to the dealership and let them know I'd be returning the car when the lease ended. She looked completely stunned. Didn't wait for me, stormed off. 15 minutes later, she was back. My credit and debit cards aren't working, she snapped. What did you do? I stayed calm. I was checking the account because I was certain I'd paid the bill, but then I got a letter saying I still owed it. I noticed you've made no payments on the household account for the past year. I'm done financing a lifestyle where I'm treated like garbage. I shut down the credit cards. You'll have to start using your own. She was furious. I rarely ever used foul language with her, but this time I did. Practically yelling, she insisted it had to be some kind of banking error. I told her no, they showed me the documentation. You withdrew the authorization yourself. No mix-up, no glitch. How could that be? She shrieked. I explained that I had contacted the bank when I first noticed, assuming it was a clerical issue. But no, the real mistake was ever letting you manage our money in the first place. She looked like she was going to blow. We didn't speak the rest of the weekend. I kept busy, mowing the lawn, trimming the garden, staying out of her way. I even painted the deck outside our bedroom. The fumes always made her nauseous. When Monday came, I threw myself into paperwork at the office. I composed messages to my clients, informing them I'd be parting ways with Bennett's once my termination became official. After that date, I'd begin job hunting. A few offers had come my way. People tried to recruit me before, but out of misplaced loyalty, or just plain stupidity, I never followed through. I hit send just before I left for the day. The emails were protected with passwords. No one at work would be able to read them. I updated every system code I had access to. Harvey wasn't in that day. I felt deceived. Part of me had expected him to confront me, to accuse me of something, to deny me the money I was owed. I wanted an excuse, any excuse, to lay him out flat on a desk and rearrange his internal organs. Instead, I paid a visit to my lawyer. Don and I go back to high school. I filled him in on everything. I needed a new will. I didn't want Judith getting a cent if something happened to me. Don quickly drew up the paperwork, including a detailed rationale for the changes, in case there was ever an attempt to contest it. The house? I'd be leaving that to my niece and nephew, my sister's kids. This would absolutely infuriate Judith. My sister despises her. Their own place is small, so this would be a major upgrade for them, but the deed would stay in the kids' names. I've never liked my sister's husband either. By law, Judith was entitled to a share of the liquid assets until the divorce. But Don showed me how to legally limit the amount that would count as cash. Once we finalized everything, his assistant typed it all up. If I came back later that afternoon, I could sign it, and it would be properly witnessed and notarized. So I did. It was signed, sealed, and official. Then Don brought up the divorce. I laid everything out. He offered to take on the case for a fair fee. Turns out he hated Bryant, too. Back in school, no one had a kind thing to say about the guy. Honestly, if Bryant died tomorrow, I'd go to his funeral just to shove him into the cremation chamber. If it were a burial, I'd dance on the grave and piss on it. I walked Don through the whole nightmare. What happened at Bennett's, the vacation, the hotel. I was expecting to get the video footage sometime this week. Once I had it, she was gone. I also told him what I'd seen on Judith's phone. Texts between her and Bryant filled with smug plans and insults. They were gleeful, mocking me as a cuckold and a pathetic loser. She was just as cruel as he was. There was no remorse in either of them. The emails told me everything. Harvey, Bennett, and Bryant had fabricated a story, just so Bryant could sneak away with Judith. On my dime. They were all laughing behind my back. Don told me to forward every piece of evidence to him. He'd get started on the divorce papers, and also prepare a lawsuit against Bennett and Company for multiple labor violations. He would also arrange to serve Judith, either at home or at her workplace, depending on what made the bigger impact. I actually laughed at that thought. Don gave me a look and said, "If we manage to catch their Wednesday rendezvous on video, can we file the paperwork the next morning before they even finish their coffee?" We both laughed. I hadn't known you were capable of being so spiteful. Impressive, really? Danny and Kate got the camera all set up. It recorded everything. Kate pulled the footage and passed it along to Danny, who then forwarded it to me. It took her 2 tries, but Kate finally got the camera positioned correctly. On Thursday morning, Dawn submitted the necessary paperwork to the court. A few hours later, she had the official documents in hand. She'd done it as a personal favor. Bryant seemed universally disliked, couldn't find sympathy if he paid for it. Later that same day, as they were checking out of the hotel, a sheriff's deputy handed Judith the legal notice. She reacted by shrieking and sobbing hysterically. I felt nothing. Seriously, why would I care? Following Dawn's instructions, he detached both the house and car keys from her keyring. That day, I clocked out of work early. I tossed all her belongings into large black trash bags and left them neatly by the front entrance. I held on to the wedding ring, it's a family heirloom. Also kept the absurdly overpriced diamond set she insisted on taking for the honeymoon. Earrings, bracelet, necklace, the whole ridiculous package. I added all of her personal documents to the pile. My home phone rang. Her parents' caller ID lit up the screen. I picked up. Her dad was already shouting, "What the hell do you think you're doing?" I hung up. He called right back, starting the same tirade. I disconnected again. We repeated this back and forth 6 times, before her sister Janine finally called. At least Janine made an effort to have a conversation. "Adam, can you explain what's going on?" "Judith is a mess. She mentioned something about a divorce, but none of it makes sense. What happened?" I drew in a long breath. "Janine, your sister's been treating me like garbage for more than a year. No matter what I did, it was never enough. Now I find out she's been cheating on me with Darren damned Bryant, for the past 14 or 15 months. I just uncovered it. There's a whole lot more, but the bottom line is, this marriage is over. You're welcome to come collect her stuff. I've already changed the locks. And I will be enforcing the prenup your father insisted on. You know, to protect his precious little whore." Heard him screaming again in the background. I hung up. About an hour later, Janine arrived alone. She drove a large SUV. I helped her load up all the bags. She had questions, I answered. She just shook her head slowly. "She's always been a selfish, clueless idiot. She had a good man and threw it away for some low-rent scumbag. Bryant's beneath you. He's not even worthy of lacing your shoes. You didn't deserve this." After they'd left the hotel, Danny held on to the video camera. We had solid footage covering 2 full days. At Don's request, he handed the camera over to me. I retrieved my car from the hotel parking lot and headed home. Sleep came quickly. I'd need the rest. Tomorrow at the office was going to be memorable. Before walking into the main building, I went into the break room and placed a box of chocolates on the counter. Fancy-looking ones. Everyone here loves sweets, except these weren't normal chocolates. They were laced with powerful laxatives, devastatingly effective. I sprinkled pepper-based powder on all the toilet seats, also tampered with the motion sensors on the paper towel and toilet paper dispensers. When I walked into the office, it was obvious. Everyone had heard. They stared, shocked that I could have done what I did. Not a single person mentioned the fact that Bryant had been screwing around with my wife. I sat down, opened my computer, and began sending out emails to clients, standard final day messages. Then I deleted the sent folder entries. I figured this was probably my last day, so I used a tool to wipe the computer's free space, nothing left to recover. Then Bennett came out of his office with Harvey and Bryant trailing him. Their faces were red with rage. Bennett was practically frothing. "Why couldn't you just leave it alone, you pathetic cuckold?" he yelled. "You're a loser. Why not just get a divorce like a normal person?" "Nobody wants a pathetic failure like you." Bryant grinned smugly. "Why did you label the divorce as adultery? You're basically shouting to the world that you're a cuck. She needed a real man." I laughed without restraint. That made him angrier. He pressed on. "You could have just gone with irreconcilable differences." "It doesn't change anything anyway," I responded in a calm voice, loud enough for everyone nearby to catch every word. "Her name's in that filing for a damn good reason. Wherever he works, they'll know who he is. Any woman he flirts with will know exactly what kind of man he is. That means this divorce wraps up in weeks, not dragged out for a year. I'm not a loser. I trusted the wrong people and got burned for it. But don't worry, I'll get what's mine back. There's always another day. You're all just a bunch of cowards." Bennett raised his voice. "Get the hell out. Don't expect a reference or a dime of whatever money you think you're owed." I held out a letter from Don and handed it to him. A tiny video camera pinned to me captured the whole exchange, clear proof that he'd received it. I spoke again, clear, slow, and loud enough for the crowd around us. "This is an official complaint about harassment in the workplace, in particular regarding Bryant's organization of paid intimacy. I have every email and message from you all, coordinating how he would replace me at that event." Then I turned to everyone watching. All of you knew. Not a single one had the decency to say a word. "Don't you ever speak to me again. You're garbage. This place is filth. How many of you are covered by your spouses while you sneak around with coworkers?" Some faces fell. I knew I'd hit home. Wouldn't want a reference from this dump anyway. "When this gets to court, who's going to risk hiring someone connected to Bennett?" I looked straight into Bryant's eyes and gave him a cold, mocking smile. "We'll cross paths again, you little punk." He looked like he was about to wet himself. I took a step back. Bennett's face was twisted in rage. Honestly, it was kind of cute. For a second, I hoped he might just drop right there. Maybe not dead, but just disabled enough to ruin the rest of his pathetic life. No such luck. I went home. The answering machine was blinking with a few messages. Janine had called, asking if I was all right and whether Judith wanted to see me. One was from her friend. "Mom, Judith is really upset. Can we fix this?" I called Janine back. "I don't want to speak to that woman. We're never getting back together. She can have Bryant or whoever else she wants. She's not my problem anymore." Janine got the message. I packed up for a road trip and drove across the country. The car was surprisingly nice. Plenty of room, smooth ride. After 3 weeks, I pulled into my driveway. A neighbor caught sight of me. "Adam, a couple people tried to take over your house while you were gone." I called the police. They handled it. They left contact info for you. I thanked him and rang up the officers. Turned out it was Judith's father and brother. They showed up trying to retrieve some engagement jewelry. Said Judith claimed it was hers. They hadn't tried to force entry, so they were told to talk to a property lawyer instead. I thanked the officer. Felt good knowing she was officially someone else's problem now. 6 weeks later, I was in court for the divorce hearing. I noticed Avril, Dawn's sister and a local journalist, sitting in the media section. This was going to be entertaining. Judith's lawyer started in. "My client doesn't want a divorce. She admits to having gone astray a few times, but is deeply remorseful. She's asking the court to order counseling so that they might move past her mistakes. If the court is unwilling to intervene, her husband will withdraw $150,000 from their shared bank account. Half of that sum was originally allocated to her." Dawn rose from her seat. "Perhaps Mrs. Holliday could testify," she suggested, "so we can examine her conduct firsthand." Her attorney quickly objected, clearly attempting to block the proposal. The judge took note of the attorney's unease about her being cross-examined. Dawn pressed on. "My lord, this marriage is irretrievably broken. Mrs. Holliday engaged in a prolonged affair with Darren Bryant, facilitated by Mr. Holliday's employer, who also happens to be Bryant's superior. Bryant, too, is employed at the same company. Mr. Holliday was terminated from his position not for misconduct, but because he refused to tolerate his wife's betrayal and chose to end the marriage. She paused for effect, then continued. The affair lasted approximately 15 months before Mr. Holliday uncovered it. Mrs. Holliday's actions were not accidental. She was fully aware of the long-standing animosity between her husband and Bryant. That rivalry dates back to childhood, when Bryant routinely bullied Mr. Holliday, until Mr. Holliday finally stood up to him. Dawn's voice sharpened. With the backing of management, Mr. Holliday was forced to cancel a planned vacation intended to help salvage his relationship. Instead, Bryant was allowed to take the trip under the guise of attending a so-called important training, which turned out to be fabricated. That was 1 year ago. The fact that she chose to accompany Bryant rather than her own husband speaks volumes about her disdain. She took a breath. Since that time, there has been no physical relationship between my client and his wife, a situation for which he is now profoundly thankful, and now her legal team raises the issue of dividing marital assets. She turned to the bench again. At her insistence, the couple kept separate personal accounts and one joint account used for shared expenses. Monthly contributions were made from each individual account until 10 months before their separation, when Mrs. Holliday unilaterally stopped her payments. Despite this, she continued spending freely on her extramarital activities, exclusively using the joint account, which by then contained only funds contributed by Mr. Holliday. Dawn lifted a document. Altogether, she spent over $47,000 on trips and expenses shared with Mr. Bryant, every penny from funds that rightfully belonged to Mr. Holliday. Their gloating messages and emails confirm this. I will be submitting the receipts for hotel stays and associated bills as evidence to this court. Her tone grew steely. This wasn't an isolated lapse in judgment, as she would have us believe. These rendezvous occurred steadily, 6 to 10 times each month, over 15 consecutive months. Neighbors confirmed that a man matching Bryant's description frequently visited the Holliday residence whenever Mr. Holliday was away on business. She paused to let the weight of her words sink in. Perhaps a one-time lapse could be forgiven through effort and compromise, but such a persistent and calculated violation of marital trust renders any reconciliation impossible. Dawn then addressed the financial burden. The $150,000 in question was intended for home improvements or a possible relocation. Over the past year, Mrs. Holliday has contributed nothing to that sum. Mr. Holliday, meanwhile, continued to pay $6,000. She never paid for the lease on the car she drove either. In fact, she deliberately registered the car in Mr. Holliday's name so that he would be responsible for the costs. Her text messages confirm this was intentional. Dawn straightened the documents in her hand. Whatever Mrs. Holliday believes she is entitled to is entirely offset by the money she misappropriated from their joint account. Judith's attorney stood abruptly. It was not theft, he stated firmly. Dawn responded coolly. That's a matter of legal interpretation. Judith, her father, and her lawyer looked visibly displeased. I, on the other hand, couldn't suppress a small, knowing smile. Dawn continued without pause. Before their wedding, both parties agreed to a prenuptial contract. Judith's solicitor interjected. We contest the legal weight of that document. In our view, it is misaligned with applicable law. Unfazed, Dawn responded. It was prepared by a respected colleague of mine, she said, glancing briefly at Judith's lawyer. The agreement permits division of jointly acquired assets, but explicitly rules out spousal support in the event of infidelity. The house in question belonged to Mr. Holliday before the marriage, inherited after the tragic loss of his parents in a car accident. No mortgage exists. She lifted another file. At the time of separation, Mr. Holliday's total holdings, excluding the disputed $10,500, amounted to $34,900. Vehicle assets have been left out of this calculation. Our financial investigation into Mrs. Holliday's affairs revealed that, post-marriage, she held known assets totaling $53,400. Mr. Holliday was aware of these. Dawn's tone grew pointed. However, we also uncovered 2 additional undisclosed accounts in her name. Judith exhaled sharply. All eyes turned to her. She met my gaze, but I simply returned her stare with a restrained, confident smile. She was visibly furious. At the time of separation, Dawn concluded, Mrs. Holliday held $217,674 across these 2 accounts. Full documentation will be submitted to the court. We ask that the asset division proceed in the usual manner. Mr. Holliday, despite his wrongful dismissal for defending his dignity, is not requesting spousal support. As outlined in the prenuptial contract, any spouse found guilty of infidelity must cover all related costs. Accordingly, I will forward the relevant invoice to my esteemed colleague later today, with the expectation that payment will be made in the standard time frame of 7 days. Judith's solicitor rose to address the court. My lord, she began, I challenge the total Mr. Holliday is requesting. The 2 contested figures represent pension funds my client was forced to liquidate in light of financial restructuring. These should not be counted. They were intended to be reinvested. But due to the emotional turmoil of the divorce proceedings, that plan was never executed. My client also refutes Mr. Holliday's assertion that she is indebted to him in excess of $47,000 in relation to the shared household expenses. As I've previously mentioned, we are still in the process of seeking legal guidance, Dawn calmly responded. The disbursements from that account align precisely with bonuses she received through her employment. Supporting documentation proves these were not retirement funds, contradicting her claim. Before pausing for lunch, the sheriff requested that Judith's legal representative confer with her client to verify the veracity of the claims made that morning. He expressed a strong dislike for deception and made it clear he expected honesty. After the break, Judith's attorney returned to confirm that Dawn's account of events was accurate. The court granted the divorce and issued a ruling that she pay me $118,000. He dismissed $150,000 of additional claims, declaring that those expenditures were made purely to demean her husband. In his final remarks, the judge censured her for her unfaithfulness and for attempting to hide financial assets during the proceedings. Avril's report in the paper was excellent, comprehensive in every important detail, though she omitted the financial ruling. Judith, along with Bryant, Harvey, and Bennett, were publicly exposed and condemned. I felt relieved to be free of that deceitful woman, though deep down I wanted even more vindication. Judith's family had always prided themselves on their devout religious image. My own absence from church services had always clashed with their sensibilities. 2 Sundays later, on Mothering Sunday, I can only guess how stunned they must have been upon exiting the church. There were at least 60 photos displayed, capturing Judith and Bryant together in compromising situations, along with 20 more of the minister with a prominent local politician's wife. Danny had set up a camera the day prior, knowing the room wouldn't be in use. While reviewing the footage, we unexpectedly caught sight of the priest himself. Judging from the atmosphere, the entire congregation was visibly uneasy. Eventually, the priest had to flee after being confronted by his wife's enraged brothers. Judith's father appeared on the brink of a heart attack. Remind me, what's one of the 10 commandments? Thou shalt not commit adultery. Perhaps they should have paid more attention to that one. 5 weeks later, I was back in court, this time facing off against Bennett, Harvey, and Bryant. Avril returned to the press gallery, notebook in hand. Bennett's lawyer made an attempt to have her barred from the courtroom, but the judge ruled the matter to be of public significance. Dawn called me to the witness stand. She questioned me for over an hour. I spoke of how Harvey would routinely assign me to cover Bryant's duties at work, how they had canceled my vacation, and how I received no compensation for my extra efforts. When I cross-referenced our joint account statements, the timing of suspicious withdrawals lined up perfectly. I once confronted Bennett about this. He merely laughed in response. He had long known of the affair. Bryant had bragged about it openly. I explained how I discovered incriminating text messages and emails exchanged among the 4 of them, revealing deliberate coordination and deceit. I ended by stating that I was never compensated for the period following my dismissal, nor for the sum that was quietly paid to Bryant instead of me. Dawn closed her questioning with 2 final prompts. How would you characterize the professional dynamic between Bennett, Harvey, Bryant, and the rest of the staff, particularly over the past 15 months? I replied plainly, They treated me with contempt. Harvey issued threats whenever I raised concerns about having to fill in for Bryant or repair his substandard work. Bennett would offer nothing more than a smug grin. My colleagues appeared to be in on jokes I was never privy to. They manipulated my honesty and work ethic to pull pranks and belittle my efforts. Despite everything, I kept trying to do what was right for the company. Harvey even forced me to use my personal phone to help the company cut costs. He installed tracking software on the company SIM, so Bryant would always know if I was nearby. She asked me, "If you had known earlier, would you still have worked that hard for them?" I told her plainly, no. I would have walked away. I had other opportunities lined up, but I chose to stay, figuring loyalty was a virtue worth upholding. Dawn took care of submitting all the documentation to the court, emails, texts, business ledgers, account statements, everything showing what I was owed and what had already been paid. Bennett's lawyer tried to argue that my claims of unpaid wages, harassment, and mistreatment were fabricated. But I keep meticulous records, and he couldn't refute any of it. He began his defense by stating that Bennett hadn't been served the documents on that Friday as required, a point the court had already considered. He insisted Bennett only received them much later, and thus hadn't had enough time to prepare his defense. I figured it was just a tactic to excuse his lack of a proper rebuttal. Dawn stood up and played the video recording, me handing Bennett the documents with the time and date clearly stamped. The lawyer turned to Bennett, clearly frustrated for being misled. He requested a short delay to speak with his client. The sheriff allowed him 20 minutes. When they returned, the attorney called Bennett to the stand. Bennett claimed the payment issues were merely clerical mistakes caused by customer cancellations. He said he had informed the finance team to pay me immediately. Conspicuously, his lawyer made no mention of Bennett's involvement in the affair or any related misconduct. As Bennett was about to step down, Dawn rose to address him. "Just a moment, Mr. Bennett," she said with a smile. That smile always meant trouble. She was ready to shred him. "Mr. Bennett, do you make a habit of recruiting individuals for extramarital affairs while on the clock?" Both Bennett and his attorney turned to face her, stunned. Bennett stammered, claiming such things sometimes happen, but denied hiring people with that intent. Dawn glanced at the paper in front of her and began reading aloud. "Mr. Harvey, dismissed from his previous job for falsifying reports and having an affair with his secretary. Mr. Bryant, terminated from his last position. Mr. Carter, fired for inappropriate relationships with 3 co-workers. Mrs. Simmons, let go after being caught having an affair with the husband of her boss's daughter." She looked back at Bennett. "Mrs. Simmons spends 2 days a week in your office, doesn't she?" "Harvey, Bryant, and Carter all share her company from time to time. You joke openly about your colleagues' wives. You swap crude stories about loyal men like Mr. Holliday who trusted you." That's when Bennett's wife walked in, still supporting him. Dawn pressed forward. "So tell me, how does hiring people for extramarital intimacy differ from pimping? How is it not solicitation?" Bennett turned red and stayed silent. His lawyer tried to object, but the sheriff overruled him, stating the question was relevant given the accusations on record. Still, Bennett said nothing. "Were the emails you sent Mrs. Holliday telling her how to control her husband the actions of a responsible employer? Did they follow safety policies meant to protect employees' mental and emotional health?" Dawn's voice remained steady, sharp. "When you discovered her affair with your colleague, you stayed quiet. Was that kindness? Or was it you wanting to see him suffer because you knew he was better than you? The only logical reason you didn't let him go," she said, "was because you needed his expertise. But even then you used Harvey to push him out. You moved him aside so Bryant could sleep with his wife. You called that being a caring boss? When the truth came out, you mocked him, then terminated him unjustly. Now look at your company without him. A mess. Your actions weren't just cruel. They meet every definition of workplace bullying and harassment. That's who you are, a predator and a coward." Dawn wasn't finished. "Who first suggested that Bryant seduce Mrs. Holliday just to humiliate her husband?" Bennett dropped his gaze. The sheriff told him to answer. "Bryant," he said quietly. "He despised Holliday. Knew he was the better engineer. But that wasn't all." Dawn asked. "Then why did you agree?" Bennett muttered, "I thought Holliday was weak." someone who could fade into the background. It amused us, he continued, watching him, clueless. Eventually, we wanted him to find out. We thought he'd cave in. It would have been fun to keep him broken and humiliated for months. We wanted to ruin him. But he fought back. And in doing so, he cost us everything. All the clients that trusted him, they walked away from us. Bryant is terrified of stepping outside. Just hearing Harvey's name makes him lose control. I glanced up the moment he mentioned they had finished it. No surprise, Bill kept his mouth shut. He was part of the scheme. They all looked at me and burst out laughing in the end. To hell with them, Don pressed on. Who suggested making Mr. Holliday cover the cost of all the room service? Harvey, someone muttered. He never liked Mr. Holliday. Couldn't stand how the man constantly highlighted his failures as a manager. Holliday? I asked. Bryant and Harvey, came the reply. I couldn't help myself. I laughed so hard I agreed to go along. Then Don lowered his voice. Stealing Halliday's wages? Bennett spat the words. His attorney jumped up to challenge the term. The sheriff allowed it. It described exactly what had happened. Bennett said, It was Harvey and Bryant. I agreed to the plan. Judith had already told us he never reviewed the books. He'd never catch on. And why did you fire him without cause? Bennett's temper boiled over. There was no cause. That bastard exposed what we did to everyone. He made us look like fools. He stood there, smirking, watching Bryant nearly vomit from the shame. He soiled himself. One look from him was all it took. You could see the hate in his eyes. I never realized how much he resented us. If I had known, I would have stayed out of it. Leaving him in that job meant living in fear, waiting for him to make his move. He laced the kitchen chocolates with laxatives. There were queues outside the restrooms. Plenty of people didn't make it in time. Nobody saw him do it, but we all knew. Don's voice softened. Just like always, you're accusing Mr. Holliday with no proof whatsoever. You stole from him, you harassed him, and all because you couldn't stand to see someone better than you. Pathetic. Don straightened in his seat. The sheriff struggled to keep a straight face as Bennett described the mess the officers had landed in. He planned to speak with Don privately afterward. In his view, Don's actions were fully justified, and had I been prosecuted and found guilty, he would have merely reprimanded me. Bryant was up next. He told his lawyer it was just a bit of fun, to get back at me. He and Judith had a grand time dreaming up ways to humiliate me. It dragged on for far longer than they'd expected. During the holidays, I was left stunned. Don asked just one question. Did you ever pay for the room you stayed in or the beer you drank at his house? Bryant looked down. No, he admitted. Then things unraveled further for Harvey. Dawn accused him of tampering with payroll and faking vacation records. She ensured his lies were documented in court. With the Bennetts looking likely to collapse, his chances of being hired elsewhere were next to nothing. The sheriff delayed sentencing for 2 weeks. Before the deadline, he asked Dawn whether I'd been paid, as Bennett had claimed. She said no. In his final judgment, he sided with me on every count. He acknowledged all my claims. He ordered them to pay me $200,000 for the harm they caused, plus $33,000 in unpaid wages. He also ruled that none of them were to be paid another penny until my full compensation had been settled. And if they tried to declare bankruptcy to dodge their obligations, he had banking records showing they held over $2 million. He warned that such a move would lead to serious jail time. Bennett was made liable for all my legal costs. The entire sum hit my account the next day. He also had to cover Don's fees, every last pound, no discounts. I finally felt free. I was in the best shape I'd been in for years. After some time in therapy and doing a bit of repair work, I came to a realization. Instead of letting someone else exploit my efforts, I should be working for myself. The largest investment I needed to make was in advanced diagnostic tools. They came with a hefty price tag, somewhere between $20,000 and $30,000. Bennett had very few clients left and decided to dissolve the business before he lost everything. On the day the assets went up for sale, I sent Danny to represent me and try to buy the equipment. I already knew they wouldn't allow me in personally. I gave Danny a strict budget of $30,000. The auction list showed the first 4 tools I had my eye on, but I figured each would run me at least $10,000 or more. So when Danny called to say I'd secured all four for just $17,000, I was shocked, in the best way. I told him to keep going and grab as many other items I had marked as possible. Later on, he rang me again. He had hit the $30,000 limit, but there were still two more pieces of equipment from my list, each with a $3,000 cap. He offered to front me the cash if I still wanted them. I told him thanks, but I could cover it. And yes, I wanted them. That equipment became the foundation of my new venture, Halliday Mechanical Services. I chose to lease a van, as the cost worked out similarly to buying, and I didn't expect it to hold resale value down the line anyway. I reached out to former clients, and business picked up quickly. Soon after, a few ex-employees of Bennett contacted me, hoping I'd bring them on board. Absolutely no chance. One day while heading home, I found myself near the hotel where Judith and Bryant were staying. I treated Danny to a few beers as a thank you, but made no gestures toward Kate. Still, I called the hotel, and to my surprise and happiness, she was working at the front desk. She smiled when she saw me. "How can I help you, sir?" she asked, radiating warmth. She had always been pretty, but now she had fully grown into a confident, striking woman. Danny hadn't exaggerated. She truly had the kind of presence that stuck in your mind. Her smile instantly drew me in. "Kate," I said, "I'd love to take you out to dinner, to thank you for all you've done with Danny. And if you'd like to do something else as well, I'd be more than happy to. I owe you a lot." Her smile widened. "You can take me out tomorrow at 7, she said. "My shift ends at 6. I'll freshen up here and try to look decent for you." I couldn't help but smile back. "More than decent. You're absolutely beautiful, even in your work uniform." "I'll be there on time. Thanks for not brushing me off." We exchanged smiles again, and as I walked out, I felt like I'd just hit the jackpot. Luckily, the job I had the next day was nearby and went off without a hitch. I wrapped up early, went home, showered, shaved, and then stood in front of my closet. I wanted to dress to impress, but I wasn't sure what would hit the right note. I felt like a nervous teenager going on a first date. That's when it hit me. My wardrobe seriously needed an upgrade. By 6:45, I was already at the hotel, waiting, nervous as ever. She appeared a few minutes later, and she took my breath away. She laughed when she saw the stunned look on my face. My jaw had literally dropped. "I'm sorry," I said, "but you look incredible." "I haven't been this tongue-tied since I was 15. She laughed again and reached out to take my hand. She brought us to a restaurant. I honestly can't recall what I ate, but it didn't matter. It was one of the most memorable nights of my life. After dinner, we moved to the lounge for a drink. I was relieved I had taken a cab. Even without the alcohol, I wouldn't have been able to drive. She had me completely spellbound. She was smart and engaging, and our conversation touched on so many topics. Even when our opinions didn't align, she never criticized me. Instead, she'd ask me to explain my perspective, which led to thoughtful, open exchanges. We listened, learned from each other, and deepened the connection. Her laughter lit up the room like sunshine. It was just past 10 when she said she had to call it a night. Her shift started at 7 the next morning. I told her I'd stick with the cab, but I'd be happy to drop her off at home first if she wanted. She agreed, and that's exactly what we did. She pulled over about half a mile from where I lived. Earlier, before we left the hotel, I had turned to her and said, "Kate, I came tonight because I owe you more than I can say for what you've done." I'd never experienced a night like this, so alive, so easy. "I'd really like to see you again," I told her, "if that's not too forward." Instead of answering, she leaned in and kissed me. Then, she took my phone from my pocket and asked me to unlock it. She tapped in her number and saved it. I gave her my own number along with my email. She promised to send her schedule so I'd know when she was free. For 3 months, we kept seeing each other. She was endlessly kind. I kept trying to convince myself she was just another version of Judith. But she wasn't. I knew that. Still, whenever she was off working, it was like I stepped into a different world. I'd been keeping an eye on Bryant. Little by little, he'd started venturing out more. He backed off for a while after Harvey took a serious beating. Some fingers were pointed at me, but I had a rock-solid alibi. I was working a factory shift over 100 miles away, surrounded by co-workers. Bennett had been far simpler to deal with. He liked his whiskey a little too much at the golf club, and that caught up with him. 3 straight Fridays busted over the legal limit. They slapped him with a decade-long driving ban, ordered him to pass a sobriety check and redo his driver's test before he'd ever get a license again. He ended up paying a $5,000 fine. Word was his wife kicked him out over cheating and was taking him for everything he had. But Bryant, he was different. He was personal. One day I spotted him cutting through the park, headed toward the pub. I caught up to him and let loose. Didn't say a word. Just left him there. The following afternoon, Kate and I were relaxing at home when the police rang. It was about the incident with Bryant. I had no alibi this time. I couldn't risk pulling a friend into it and risking jail time. Everything I'd worn, mask, gloves, clothes, even my underwear, had been burned to ash before I got back. I never spoke a word to Bryant. Kate laughed when the officers were at the door. She joked with them, said I wouldn't have had the energy. We were in bed all day. The cop left, and I looked over at her. She smiled. I reached for her hand, pulled her close, and then we forgot everything else. Next chapter. At work, the universe seemed determined to break me. Every fix led to another failure. The equipment was ancient. I'd told them 2 years ago it needed replacing. A new machine was on order, but it wouldn't arrive for another 6 months, so repairs were my only option. What was supposed to be a 2-day job stretched into 4. Kate and I stayed in touch by phone. Her voice was all I needed to stay grounded, light, warm, full of little stories. She laughed when I told her about the chaos at work. The time apart made me think about the road ahead. After Judith, I didn't want anyone else. I didn't trust love anymore. Kate told me she'd waited until I was ready. I tried to imagine life without her, and the thought made my stomach turn. It'd be emptier than what I had with Judith. If I was meant to be with anyone, it was her. I loved her, deeper than I'd ever loved anyone. I needed to talk to her about it, about everything I wanted going forward. That night, she was working late, until 11, so I didn't expect to see her. I was putting together the final invoice when the doorbell rang. To my surprise, she was standing there. She looked unsettled. I invited her in. I moved in to kiss her, but she gently stopped me. Now I was the one feeling tense. Her voice was soft, almost sorrowful. "Adam," she began, "while you were away, Judith was at the hotel. She was there with her team, giving a presentation." She paused before continuing. "Afterward, she pulled me aside. She knows about us, about you and me. She asked me to pass on a message." She hesitated, her eyes on mine. "She wants to talk. She said you haven't spoken since the papers were served. She doesn't want to hurt us, Adam. She just wants the chance to tell you everything. In person. Wherever you choose. I can't help but wonder if you still care about her," she said softly. "You never talk about her at all. She has more life experience than I do. Maybe what you had with her was richer than anything we've shared. I don't want to lose you. But if it's going to happen, I'd rather it be now than further down the road." Her voice cracked, almost breaking into tears as she finished. "Kate," I said, "while I was away, I couldn't stop thinking about you. I love you in ways I didn't know were even possible. No one has ever held this space in my heart like you do. I kept you at arm's length because I was terrified, scared of getting hurt again. My rational mind kept saying I was safe with you, that you wouldn't do what she did. I've never spoken about Judith because I feel nothing for her now, only disgust at what I let her do to me, and shame that I allowed myself to be treated that way. She's right about one thing, it's time I talk about it. She knows I'll never forget, never forgive. There's no feeling left between us. Not from her, not from me. You told me you'd wait until I was ready. You said I was worth the wait, as long as you could be the one standing beside me in the end. I kept repeating to myself, let love in, but I was too afraid. And then you came and took that fear away. I want you in my life, Kate." She rushed into my embrace and kissed me, and with a smile she whispered, "I brought a rain check just in case. Don't forget." A week later, I found myself sitting across from Judith at a quiet bar tucked between our 2 neighborhoods. She looked thinner, more uncertain than I remembered. We both ordered coffee, then she began. "Adam, thank you for coming. I can see Kate brings out something good in you. You look happier than I've seen you in years, maybe ever. She's not like me. So please, take a chance on her. She's stunning. She's kind. I want to say I'm sorry, even though I know how meaningless that must sound coming from me. the woman who ruined everything. I've spent a long time trying to understand what I did and why. At first, I blamed you. But Janine wouldn't let me hide behind that. She forced me to face how deeply I hurt you. I've been seeing a counselor, someone who's helped me uncover truths I'd buried for years. There's still a lot I have to work through. I could talk for hours about it all, but I'll keep it short. I've always been self-absorbed. I thought I was better than everyone around me. But then I met you. You were genuine, compassionate, oblivious to your own quiet power. Your presence alone drew people in. I fell in love with you, something I'd never felt before, and you loved me back with a depth I never deserved. You would have given me anything I asked for. Like that diamond ring on our honeymoon, even though it meant giving up the tour you'd looked forward to. But over time, your generosity started to feel like weakness. When we talked about kids, I was excited at first. But I'd already lost touch with who you really were, and with that, I lost respect for you. So I changed my mind, and you didn't argue. You always put me first. And I didn't understand the value of that. Not until it was far too late. When I met Bryant, it was at a business event. He was sharp, charming, and happened to be your biggest rival. We talked. At first I said too much about you, then we kept meeting, mostly just to talk about you. He noticed how little I respected you. He used it. A few weeks later, he made a move, and I let it happen. I didn't even try to stop him. Looking back now, it's clear. You were the 100. He was the 1. But I kept going back. Not for him, for the adrenaline rush of betrayal. I hated myself for it. But instead of dealing with that, I turned my self-loathing on you. I made your life unbearable. Hell might have been easier than what I put you through. I felt this perverse need to humiliate you, and yet I don't even know why. You didn't know what was happening. So how could you feel shame? Why did I want to break you? I was stunned when Bryant suggested replacing you on that holiday trip. You'd planned that trip to try and save us. But again, I let my recklessness win. Harvey and Bennett were in on it too. I didn't realize until it was too late that Bryant was feeding them every detail. My guilt turned me cold. I rejected your affection because I couldn't stand to feel love again. Not after what I had done. I was disgusted by who I had become, and I knew you never deserved any of it. I didn't realize until the trial that the whole thing had been planned. The photos put up just to shame you publicly. I truly regret it. Those 2 days I spent with Bryant should have marked the end for me. If I had known then what you already understood, I would have never gone through with it. Listening to Dawn talk about your divorce and the case against Bennett filled me with guilt. Because of my recklessness, you were caught in a storm you didn't earn. I behaved selfishly, and afterward I was disgusted with myself. It hit me that the only one who ended up truly humiliated was me, and I had it coming. I couldn't believe I had wasted so much of my money and trust on that scumbag. When we walked out of the church and saw those pictures, yours, the priest's, I knew right away you were behind it. I was furious, but my guilt kept me from walking away. You deserved to expose me. That's when I finally went into therapy. Not long after that, I caught Brian cheating and took matters into my own hands. It happened at the club. She smiled faintly as she added, I heard he's no longer working, though he never got arrested. My father and brother tracked him down, forced him to return every cent he conned me out of. I sensed something was off, but never knew the full story. I'm sorry I was such a selfish, blind woman, confusing love with obedience, mistaking compassion for weakness. I'm transferring to a different office, leaving this town behind. Every time I step outside, it feels like the walls close in. I need a clean break, a chance to start over and do better. I might never find someone like you again, but losing you is entirely my fault. I misunderstood everything you did for me. What I saw as weakness was actually strength. You never hurt me. I just couldn't see it at the time. If there's one thing I can offer from what I've learned in therapy, it's this. It's okay to disagree, to want different things, but you have to talk about it. Don't give in just to keep the peace. Speak your truth. That's one thing Bennett was right about. You really are an outstanding engineer. It doesn't shock me that you're succeeding. You're a good man even if you doubt yourself too much. Tell Kate how you truly feel, especially the things you've been burying because of me. Be honest. She's a good match for you. With a heavy heart, she ended. I've been a complete fool." She stood, gave me one last look, and walked out. I went home, where Kate was waiting with concern in her eyes. I said the 5 words that would change everything. "Kate, we need to talk." She raised her eyebrows. I smiled and kissed her softly. Then I told her everything. How Judith had hurt me, how Bryant was involved, and how I'd felt like I wasn't worthy of her love. When I finished, tears were running down her cheeks. I cried too, and for the first time, really letting it all go. We held each other as the emotions poured out. After the tears, she gently wiped my face and said, "Adam, Judith was right about 2 things. How wonderful you are and how little you believe it. If therapy helped her, maybe it could help you too." She continued, "When you mentioned children, I could hear in your voice how deeply you care. The house is beautiful with a big yard. It could become a real family home. And if we build a life together, I would love to have kids with you." I'm not Judith. I don't see calmness and kindness as weakness. I see them as strength. You try so hard to be better, to support others. Sure, we'll argue, have disagreements, but I will always love and respect you. She reminded me of our first night together, how we talked through our differences over dinner, learning from each other's perspectives. That's how we grow, by communicating. Later, she moved in. We discussed whether she should sublet her apartment. She wanted to wait a few months, to make sure I was happy before making it permanent. A few weeks after she moved in, I was in the safe when she noticed the jewelry boxes. She insisted I show them to her. I opened the large box with the diamonds and told her the whole story, including how I had missed a tour I'd dreamed of, all because I had trusted Judith, who ended up betraying me with Bryant. A warm flush rose to my cheeks as I accepted the small box. "Kate, this has been in my family for generations," I began. "I once gave it to Judith, but in truth, I never let it go. I held on to it." "It's an engagement ring," I added, my heart pounding. "I've been meaning to ask you for weeks." "I already spoke to your dad. He was overjoyed, and your mom couldn't be happier." Taking a deep breath, I looked into her eyes. "Kate, will you marry me? If you say yes, we'll find you a ring that's truly yours." She met my gaze, eyes shimmering, and whispered with a soft smile, "Yes." She opened the box slowly, inspecting the ring with tender care. "It's beautiful," she said, slipping it onto her finger. "I'll wear it with pride, though it needs resizing." Then her tone turned thoughtful. "But I can't wear the diamond. Its past carries too much weight. I don't think either of us would want that. You should give the diamond to Judith as a gesture of closure." I reached out to Judith, arranged to return the diamond to her. She received it with genuine appreciation. She told me that if she ever found herself at a moral crossroads, the diamond would serve as a reminder of love that chose selflessness over possession. In the months that followed, I began therapy. Kate came with me, and although the sessions helped, it was her unwavering love that truly healed me. It became clearer each day. Kate was the love that suited me completely. So much joy filled our lives that others often commented on the change in me. Meanwhile, my company was flourishing. I brought in 3 new engineers, each one carefully chosen not just for skill, but for integrity. All were solid in their personal lives, loyal, grounded, and unwilling to tolerate betrayal among colleagues. Kate helped wherever she could, fitting in office work between shifts. But as the business grew, so did the workload. We had serious conversations about the future. Eventually, she joined full-time, and we brought in additional office staff. Still, she loved her job at the hotel, which kept her engaged across different areas, front-facing roles and operations behind the scenes. She was more than capable of running my office, but we both knew that once children entered the picture, someone else would have to take over. So we hired an assistant who could take on most of the day-to-day administration. Kate still handled the accounts. She said it didn't take much effort. My systems were tidy and efficient. Kate and I were married in an intimate ceremony. Danny stood by me as best man, while Jacqueline, Kate's sister, served as her maid of honor. Her parents beamed with pride. They welcomed me as if I were their own son, and I couldn't have hoped for a better family to marry into. Kate insisted we go on a honeymoon. She planned it just for me, including a historic tour I had always wanted to do during my first honeymoon. We both enjoyed exploring ancient landmarks, though I was more enthralled than she was. In return, I braved her passion for theme parks and roller coasters, enduring ride after ride with her the following week. One night, as I was driving us back to the hotel, she let slip, perhaps unintentionally, that she had trained as a commando. Our time at the hotel was intense and intimate. We hardly made it through the doorway before discovering each other all over again. A couple of months passed, and her parents were thrilled again, this time at the arrival of their first grandchild. We moved into Kate's apartment temporarily, while construction crews expanded and remodeled our home. The renovations were finished a month before our son, Gordon, came into the world. Soon after, our daughter Jennifer was born, followed by our youngest, John. 11 years on, I have a team of 12 engineers and 6 administrative staff. Cheryl still keeps a watchful eye out for any sign of trouble, especially after the fiasco with the deceitful secretary years ago. Whenever workloads get heavy, Cheryl takes breaks from my office to maintain a healthy boundary. Our firm remains small and close-knit, and I know her husband personally. I would never do anything to damage the sense of trust we've built. I continue to screen all new hires carefully. I won't tolerate manipulation or dishonesty in any form. As for Judith, I've seen her on occasion when she visits her parents. Her career is going well, but she remains single. Once, Kate noticed her dining with Janine at a local restaurant. Her expression was wistful. Sadness mingled with longing. Kate and I were there with the kids, who were running wild in the nearby play area, full of laughter. I gave them a push on the swings and caught Jennifer as she jumped from the parachute. On our way out, we exchanged a quick greeting. In the end, Judith's affair became a strange blessing. It opened the path that brought me to Kate. Her unwavering love and encouragement are my foundation. This is the happiest I've ever been,